Good afternoon. My name is Hele Kiimann, and I'm going to present a small case study, it lasted a couple of years, which was a part of the bigger project called Just North. And I've been conducting the work together with my research partner, PI, Professor Susan Miller from Syracuse University and Department of Geography. And maybe a couple of words about what this bigger project was about. The Just North was aiming to contribute to the change of the future of the Arctic economic development by bringing recognition and respect for different value systems when it comes to the decision making. And the part of the case study we were conducting was called Field Research Stations, Sustainable Development and the Knowledge Production in the North. This case study was designed to examine some of these views of national and international economics versus to the local value of the field stations, and to understand what the inherent values field stations stakeholders had with regards to the scientific endeavor, to its and their sustainability, and of the knowledge that the stations produce. Through this, we identify some barriers to the field stations' participation in just sustainable development and offer some recommendations to mitigate these and enhance the station's role in both national and international agendas as well in the local communities. And some words also about the field research stations I've been using for our case studies. We have investigated 3 field stations that are all part of the Interact network of the scientific stations. And Interact was established to enhance international cooperations in science through the building infrastructural capacity for the research and monitoring of the Arctic, and to help provide access to some of the 68 field stations. And due to the situation with Russia at the moment, the network no longer engages with the 21 Russian stations. The 3 stations that we have been working with is the Abisko Scientific Field Research Station in Abisko, northern Sweden, Arctic Station in Kekertessuaq, Greenland, and Nunavut Research Institute in Iqaluit, Canada. The 2 older stations, Kekertessuaq and Abisko, are responsible for the development of extensive historical datasets on environmental processes that are integrated with global climate and ecosystem monitoring, although both are beginning to incorporate social, cultural, and health research. NRI, the Nunavut Research Institute, came into existence with the founding of Nunavut through combining several regional research facilities with the research licensing body Science Institute of the Northwest Territories. NRI also has a task of reviewing research applications and providing licenses as a part of the Arctic College, and its so-called primary mission is to develop, facilitate, and promote scientific research as a resource for the well-being of the people in the Nunavut. Now also some words about the methods we were using for our case study, that we were able to make the visits to each of the stations in Abisko and north of Sweden, and as well to Canada Nunavut Research Institute. But unfortunately, due to the different circumstances like COVID restrictions, station renovation, and funding at the end, we were unable to visit the Arctic Station in Kekertessuaq in person. So that we would like to emphasize that the results therefore can't be considered representative of the Kekertessuaq Arctic Station, because we were mostly doing the Zoom interviews and talking with our colleagues from different universities who have been working at the station, but not so much with the local people. So more generally, our data consisted of policy and legal data, interviews, informal conversations, newspaper interview comments, and focus group discussions. We used a list of value terms common across all the case studies. Just to mention that the project Just North had almost like 15 different case studies and very different institutions and sort of geographically wide selection, so that the value terms were sort of worked out across the project, and that was what was guiding the interviews and drive our search for the statements within the documents and the transcripts, so that it could be done some conclusions of the project just now in general. Policy documents were those related to Arctic science. Our focus groups included different number of participants on the course on the representation of science and the environment within different forms of media, and a group that assembled for the lecture given by us at the location, for example, in Abisko station. And informal statements were from local community members who were not formally interviewed, but who freely expressed opinions to us. And statements from newspaper reports were sought in response to the difficulties surrounding travel to our field sites. Our interviews usually consisted like up to 1.5 hour semi-structured conversations. We had 4 themes for the questioning: knowledge, research, the role of field research station, and sustainability. The talking points were designed to understand the background of the interview, the relationship to the field station in question, and their own relationship to education or knowledge production. We were also interested in the physical presence on the field station, what it meant to them, their understanding of its relationship to the local community, and its importance as a site of knowledge production. In addition, I wanted to know what type of knowledge they considered important more generally, that is, what questions they wanted answers to, and the degree to which they may not, or they may be addressed by the knowledge produced by the station, or how accessible that knowledge is to them. And finally, we were interested in the understanding of sustainability, what that word meant to them personally in terms of the field station and its research, and for the local community. Values that individual researchers assigned were cross-checked through the sharing a subset of the entire dataset. Now, some words about these value indicators, but as I mentioned before, it was worked out for the whole project because the project consisted at least 15 different case studies. And in accordance with the overarching project goal, we used a standard list of value indicators to represent substantive and procedural justice, ecosystem services, and sustainability. When we use these terms directly with our participants, in particular in one of the focus groups in Abisko, it was clear that the terms were ambitious and meaningless to many, which was in some extent surprised us, in some extent not. And this was most notable in the terms of ecosystem services. This is the term that are more technical and have specific meaning within the branch of the practice. Our findings vis-a-vis indicators also reflected a language barrier in terms of neutral policy word usage that distances the individual and the more personal language preferred by the participants. It is noteworthy that the value terms that had the greatest resonance with participants across all the stakeholder groups were those reflecting people interacting, discussing, participating in decisions, and taking into the consideration multiple viewpoints. Ideals are the foundation of liberal theories of justice, albeit not always imposed or protected. A subset of some of those indicators that emerged frequently among those participants and in policy documents were actually community, connectivity, inclusivity, and participation. And very often what was mentioned that came out was the connectivity, and it was a different form of the connectivity. But for example, the reindeer herders, that they brought the example that sustainability should be looked at the entire landscape. For example, that you can't look to the certain aspect, for example, mining operation, and see it as an isolated island within the sea of the nothing. Especially in the Canada case study was inclusivity, that the need to hear the local voices or local community needs when it comes to the research questions or funds or topics and so on. And also it's a seen that being inclusive is a choice. and that's pretty much expected. Present is partnership, because this was often mentioned during the interviews and discussions and informal conversations. And the expectations are like, as we do emphasize on the sort of interest in the traditional knowledge, co-production, citizen science, and so on, that there is a lot of practicalities in a local level, which are really like obstacles for conducting that kind of sort of cooperation between the local community and the research community. And for example, there was brought in the north of Sweden that even if the research station actually take action and they reach out, but then this sort of local Sami, like reindeer herders, they have both administrative burden and plus practical work. That often there is no time and no maybe clear communication between those actors, and present recommendations to enhance station sustainability and community value. Knowledge production and the field stations fall under both national and international legal and financial regulations. Several entities have responsibility for what kind of knowledge is produced and how it is valued. The gaps highlighted in this analysis point to the several policy areas that could be addressed. For the first, researchers often feel pressured by current stipulations to engage with the local community, yet have little expertise in the public outreach. We recommend that field stations engage a permanent outreach individual or staff who can liaise with the community, both connecting interested community members with pertinent research and relying findings back to the community. Second, the colonial history of knowledge production and field stations as symbols of that colonization demands that the definition of knowledge be broadened. This is particularly crucial at the local scale, where quantitative data from a few points are insufficient to the understanding the interplay of natural and human processes across the landscape. We recommend that empowerment of the local and indigenous voices through the facilitating their engagement in the research process and as experts in advisory panels for environmental and development decision-making should be a priority. This must be more than participation. Their empowerment requires being part of the knowledge that is produced through the engagement with the local research. It requires training or assistance with the so-called rules of play in advisory panels and meetings, and requires financial compensation for the time spent in meetings that reduces their own ability to make a living. And both these previous recommendations speak to the concept of co-produced knowledge. Although this is desirable, it should not be the only methodology used in all research projects. A final recommendation then is that field stations engage with the local community to establish the set of key themes or areas of research. These might change annually or every few years to attract different sets of researchers. Such a mechanism empowers the local community, allowing space for particular foci that would directly benefit the community in environmental, social, and cultural ways. And further, it would also increase community trust in researchers and their work. Thank you very much for your attention on this late afternoon. I still hope that if you have questions, that it can be forwarded to me via email.